On February 6, 1996, Zach, a 10-year-old boy, disappeared on his way to school. As investigators searched for him, they began to focus on a familiar individual, Nathaniel Bar.
Nathan Bar was the worst pedophile I ever met, actually.
It went from something bad's happened to something horrific, evil has happened.
I was working day shift that day, and one of the detectives was on his way to work and had just driven by Lincoln School and spotted Nathan Bar dressed like a policeman. This detective knew who he was and thought, this is not right, and we stopped him. He had a badge, a stun gun, a fake gun, pepper spray, a police uniform. I mean, everything to basically kidnap a young boy.
As the investigation continued, what they uncovered went beyond mere abduction. It was something straight out of a horror movie. They were looking into abduction, but what they would find was something nightmares are made of.
They found a whole series of coded writings that Barjona had made, and they looked like just random letters, just in small blocks. No one could really make sense of what it was. And they were trying to figure out what Barjona had done with Zach Ramsey.
And it took us about 6 months to decode them.
John Cameron looked down at the coded writings, and he saw something that began to emerge from those coded writings. Little boy pot pie, scissor yummy, and at that point, John Cameron actually screamed, "My God, he ate him."
Zachary Xerxes Ramsey, also known as Zach, was a 10-year-old boy. The friend group would typically convene before the school bell rang to engage in physical activity and play together before class. Regrettably, those mornings of blissful childhood would soon come to a tragic conclusion. On Tuesday, February 6, 1996, it was a frigid winter morning. Zach wore a blue denim jacket with green sleeves, a blue football jersey with his last name imprinted on the back in gold letters, stone-washed jeans, and black high-top sneakers at 7:30 a.m. The plan, as is customary, was to convene outside the school, engage in conversation, and play before the bell tolled. In his haste to go to school, he nearly forgot his lunchbox at home in his excitement. Zach began his journey to school by walking. Nevertheless, that day would be anything but ordinary. Before that day, he had never been afraid of anything. Although his school was barely 6 blocks away, he decided to take a shorter route by entering an alley. Someone was sitting in a 4-door, off-white sedan in the alley behind a house on the 400 block of 5th Avenue North. Whether or not he noticed was unknown. While the figure remained, the engine idled quietly. Given Zach's intelligence, it was fair to expect him to shift his course if he had detected anything out of the ordinary. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary since he was in a familiar area. However, somewhere along the path, from where the alleyway intersects with 6th Street to where it emerges at 7th, Zach mysteriously vanished. His friends waiting for him assumed that he must have been unwell and decided to stay home. He was marked absent by his teacher that morning after the bell rang, and following school policy, Zach's mother was called and informed of her son's absence. After searching for Zach without any luck, his mother filed a report stating that he was missing. When the news reached the public, it quickly became a topic of great interest in the Great Falls community. The public was deeply unsettled by the news of a child who went missing while on their way to school, leaving them in disbelief and unprepared for the worst. In 1995 to 1996, Montana experienced a high rate of violent crimes, with incidents occurring approximately every 6 hours and 30 minutes on average. Little did they know, a sinister force had descended upon their once serene and joyful community. In the Great Falls, a huge and urgent hunt for little Zach began immediately. Hundreds of volunteers, police, and rescue teams responded after the news spread around the globe. Zach was last seen in the neighborhood surrounding the 400 block of 4th Street North. Authorities thought they found Zach's belongings, a denim jacket and blue jeans, during their search. Near the alleyway where Zach vanished, the jeans were discovered in a dumpster, and the jacket in a nearby field. Near the spot where Zach vanished, several interviews were conducted. Several eyewitnesses confirmed seeing a young boy dressed in this manner. Some people recognized Zach from when he walked down the hall to school that day. The veracity of these stories started to unsettle me. Zach appeared to be waiting for someone, according to the eyewitness who saw him in the alley. A more unsettling story came from a 3-person family who resided in an alleyway apartment. Earlier that day, they claimed to have seen Zach in the alleyway and nearly ran him over in an off-white 4-door vehicle. Another witness who lived near the end of the alleyway observed Zach in tears, with an overweight adult male walking a few feet behind him at approximately 7:45 a.m. The adult male who followed Zach was supposedly identified by one witness. He noticed a man wearing a navy blue police jacket while he was taking out the trash. The witness observed Zach entering the alleyway while the man remained next to the dumpster. He identified the man as Nathaniel Bar, someone with a troubling history of crimes involving children. To reach Zach, they had to possess a comprehensive understanding of Nathaniel. Nathaniel was born on February 15, 1957 in Worcester, Massachusetts, as David Paul Brown to parents, Philip Brown and Tyra Brown. One of 3 siblings, he was the youngest. He appeared to be ravenous for food even as a newborn. Because of his excess weight and underdeveloped muscles, he was unable to move. Another thing he hated was being touched. He suffered from hydrocephalus, a condition where the brain cavities are filled with excess fluid, which causes pressure and damage at the tender age of 3 weeks. He was able to overcome this illness in due time. The Brown family decided to relocate to Lantana, Florida when he was 3 years old. For the first several years of his existence, Nathaniel lived there. At a nearby construction company, his father, Philip, worked as a mechanic for heavy machinery. Because of his severe discipline, Nathaniel was not an easy child to deal with. Furthermore, Nathaniel did not have a close relationship with any of his siblings. They and other kids became easy targets for his thefts. Kleptomania, a mental illness that causes an individual to desire to steal, was what Philip perceived as this heist. Additionally, he had the impression that the disorder was related to his sexual orientation. He was afraid Nathaniel might become gay as an adult. This is why Philip frequently used a thick leather belt as a form of discipline with him. It seemed like Nathaniel was born with a lot of strange and disturbing quirks, and it wasn't just because of his violent past or brain damage. His disturbing psychological tendencies began when he was 6 years old, when he would pick at his skin until it scabbed, and then chew on the sore until it bled. Additionally, he occasionally consumed his blood without qualms. Both he and his classmates were horrified by the sight, which the school found disturbing. The school frequently contacted his mom to inquire about the strange habit, but she never provided an explanation and didn't appear too distressed by it. Just a few months after returning to Worcester in 1964, when he was 7 years old, he enticed a girl who was 5 years old to his basement by saying he would show her a Ouija board that he had received as a gift. He choked her with the same Ouija board. Thankfully, Nathaniel's mom heard the girl's cries and rushed over to save the day. After the girl's release, no one brought up the subject again. As far as Nathaniel's mind was concerned, there was no turning back. Nathaniel was 15 years old in 1973 when something else happened. To lure 2 young boys from Webster to a cemetery, Nathaniel wore a jacket resembling that of a police officer and composed a note using words cut out of magazines. He gave the lads $20 and a secret. Nevertheless, the lads turned him down due to his peculiar appearance. No charge will be filed against Nathaniel by the boy's mother. Instead of the criminal justice system, she thought Nathaniel should get mental health treatment. Every time Nathaniel wore his police jacket, a child's life was in jeopardy. This was a decision that would come back to haunt everyone. Nathaniel, who was 18 years old and about to drop out of high school, saw a boy making his way to school in late March 1975. In his infamous police uniform, Nathaniel abducted Richard O'Connor, an 8-year-old boy. Thankfully, a vigilant neighbor saw the kidnapping and called the authorities. The kidnapping vehicle was later located in a parking lot by a patrol car. After Nathaniel was told to exit the vehicle, backup was summoned. In the vehicle, Richard O'Connor lay, bloodied and critically ill, on the brink of death. He had also gone to the bathroom and peed himself. Nathaniel was immediately taken into custody. However, after that, he was released on probation. He visited neighboring Hartford, Connecticut during that period. There, he kidnapped a 9-year-old girl while posing as a police officer. Nathaniel threw the girl out of the car by the sidewalk after she started convulsing and vomiting during the assault. His arrest was made possible because a witness took note of his license plate number. 2 arrests like these would lead one to believe that Nathaniel's threat was finally fading away. But this case is unique. Despite Nathaniel's arrest for this assault, his probation officer was never informed about it. The conclusion of his probationary term was marked by his release from parole in May 1976. Along with a letter of gratitude for his cooperation, this release was presented to Nathaniel. If anything, Nathaniel's mental instability was worsened by these arrests. In Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, on September 24, 1977, he saw 2 lads leaving the White City cinemas, giggling and enjoying themselves. Now, Nathaniel pretended to be an undercover agent for the FBI. The lads got into his car because he persuaded them in some way. After he had the boys handcuffed, he drove them to a remote spot and tortured them. Nathaniel, who weighed 375 pounds, pounced on one of the boys' chest multiple times before stopping, seemingly convinced he had killed him. As he drove away, he left the first boy by the side of the road and kept the second boy alive in his trunk, treating him like a piece of candy he would eat later. The lone boy, though, regained consciousness and eventually received assistance. The boy in the trunk and Nathaniel were both located within an hour or 2. This was the first time Nathaniel would face a severe penalty for a crime. His sentence at the Massachusetts Correctional Institution, Concord, ranged from 18 to 20 years. Nathaniel was deemed unfit for his present institution following discussions in which he detailed his twisted sex fantasies. He is now under the supervision of a prison psychologist. Following his transfer, he was taken to Bridgewater State Hospital, a facility run by the state that provides treatment for sexually dangerous criminals. He was supposed to stay there forever. On March 22, 1984, while still in prison, Nathaniel, whose legal name was David Brown, changed his name to Nathaniel Benjamin Levi Bar Jonah. It was unclear if he intended for this name change to signal a change in attitude. He offered multiple justifications for the name change. One of these was that he wanted to know what it was like to be discriminated against and persecuted as a Jew. His desire for his name to reflect his Jewish identity was expressed later on when he revealed to someone that he was Jewish, even though he had no Jewish connections beyond his name and Scandinavian ethnic heritage. During the same year of 1984, 2 psychologists retained by the defense attested that Nathaniel posed no longer an imminent danger to society. thereby granting him a parole hearing. Nathaniel was ineligible to roam free because the state of Massachusetts did not present sufficient evidence or testimony to prove that he was dangerous. Judge Walter Steele of the Superior Court released him on February 12, 1991. This release was originally scheduled for July of that year, but it was postponed due to administrative issues. His assigned psychiatrists were sure that he still fantasized about kidnapping, killing, and eating children, even though the defense psychiatrists testified differently. Nathaniel also told one of the Bridgewater psychiatrists that the violent thoughts of torture he had always harbored were the main source of his sexual arousal. Nevertheless, Nathaniel was let back into society. After only 1 month in prison, it was obvious that Nathaniel's only change was the spelling of his name. On August 9, 1991, in Oxford, Massachusetts, a 7-year-old was sitting alone in a car. Taking advantage of the moment, Nathaniel got into the car. Nathaniel, who had gained 300 pounds during his time in prison, sat on the boy's chest. Upon catching sight of this, the mother bolted for the vehicle. Nathaniel was so startled that he ran away. Even though the cops eventually caught on to him and arrested him, he came clean about his plans to murder the kid. The district attorney for Worcester County offered a 2-year probationary term in return for a guilty plea to battery and assault. Along with that, he was told to return to his mother's home in Great Falls, Montana. Once again, Nathaniel was free to roam. Even more surprising was the fact that Massachusetts officials practically begged him to relocate to Montana. Nevertheless, Nathaniel appeared to remain unnoticed for the subsequent few years, until the point where Zachary Ramsey, who was 10 years old at the time, vanished while he was on his way to school on February 6, 1996. When the investigators were looking for him, they started concentrating on a person who was already known to them. They discovered something that went beyond a simple kidnapping. It was something that could have been taken straight out of a horror film. They were investigating the possibility of kidnapping, but what they discovered was the stuff that terrifying nightmares are made out of. Detective Bill Belushi was assigned to this case. He received a list of offenders in the area, but Nathaniel was not included. Despite the list, Detective Belushi remained steadfast in his pursuit of Nathaniel, as multiple witnesses had spotted him in the alleyway. Detective Belushi made several attempts to obtain search warrants for the residence shared by Nathaniel and his mother, but unfortunately all his requests were denied. Meanwhile, Nathaniel decided to leave his mother's home. Over the next 3 years, a thrilling cat and mouse game unfolded between him and Detective Belushi. Despite Nathaniel's extensive criminal record, he skillfully navigated the legal system, avoiding the appropriate repercussions. Nevertheless, Belushi operated in a unique manner, carefully observing specific details and recognizing Nathaniel as an extraordinary case. Despite Nathaniel's lack of a documented murder, he had come perilously close to it on numerous occasions. On December 13, 1999, Belushi noticed Nathaniel outside an elementary school for the 3rd time in a week, a detail that had not escaped Belushi's watchful gaze. Over the past 3 years, Belushi had been convinced that Nathaniel was destined to commit another crime, and Belushi had every reason to be concerned. During these visits to the local elementary school, Nathaniel would don a dark blue jacket and a knit cap, while also carrying 2 cans of pepper spray, a toy gun, and a badge. Belushi took swift action, seizing the chance to press charges against Nathaniel for impersonating an officer and carrying a concealed weapon. On December 15, 1999, a judge granted a search warrant to investigate the objects that were used to impersonate officers at both Nathaniel's mother's home and his own. It wasn't a search warrant for violent crimes, but it was all Valu she needed. During the search of Nathaniel's home, the police discovered a mix of anticipated and surprising items. Various items were used by Nathaniel to convincingly portray himself as a law enforcement officer. In the collection, we find a variety of items, including different coats, one in a dark blue shade and another with a toy badge tucked away in the pocket. Additionally, there is a second toy badge, a stun gun, and a baseball cap with the words "Security Enforcement" embroidered on it. However, the investigation took a chilling twist when investigators stumbled upon a pull string emerging from the ceiling of Nathaniel's kitchen. 2 albums were discovered containing images of children, along with a document discussing knots and bondage, and an article titled "Autoerotic Asphyxia." Upon closer investigation, detectives uncovered that Nathaniel had failed to show up for work on February 6, 1996, the day Zach went missing, as well as in the days preceding it. That day, his mother had gone with his brother to another town for a funeral. Nevertheless, Nathaniel ended up keeping her car, a 4-door 1978 Toyota Corolla in an off-white color. After making some significant findings, Belushi wasted no time in obtaining a second search warrant just 2 days after the initial one. During this second search in the house, police made a chilling discovery. Among newspaper clippings from Zach's case, they stumbled upon a mysterious list titled Lake Webster, containing the names of 54 boys. In their investigation, they delved deep into Nathaniel's earliest victims in Massachusetts, revealing the identities of 3 boys he assaulted in the 70s. The most recent entry was about a person named Zachary Ramsey, and it was accompanied by the word "died." And the story didn't end there. Alongside the discovery of 3,500 photographs of children and underdeveloped film containing explicit images of Nathaniel and 3 unidentified boys, other evidence was also found. There were journals filled with mysterious characters that appeared to be written in a secret code. These were promptly collected for future examination. The roommates of Nathaniel were interviewed. A former roommate claimed to have witnessed clothes that closely resembled the ones Zach was last seen wearing. He had also discovered a pair of gloves. During a casual conversation with another roommate, Nathaniel casually dropped the name Zachary Ramsey without providing much context. In a chilling twist, he boldly asserted that Zach's whereabouts would forever remain a mystery, as his body had been gruesomely dismembered and scattered across various locations. After a month had passed, the code written in the journal discovered at Nathaniel's residence was finally cracked. It was a cookbook, and the names of the recipes hinted at the dark depths of Nathaniel's imagination. The names of the dishes had a chilling theme, evoking a sense of unease and discomfort, like Little Boy Pot Pie, French Fried Kid, and Little Boy Stew. In the end, law enforcement discovered a significant, discolored piece of plywood in Nathaniel's garage. It had been meticulously cleaned with bleach and bore multiple marks from a meat cleaver, as if it had served as a makeshift cutting surface. During the investigation, a luminol test uncovered a chilling discovery. The word Tita had been written on the floor in blood. In 1973, a tragic incident occurred in Rindge, New Hampshire. The victim was James Tita, a 15-year-old boy who was found, raped, and strangled. The details surrounding this case are haunting and continue to raise questions. It was discovered that following Zach's disappearance, Nathaniel hosted cookouts for his neighbors, offering them deer burgers with an unusual flavor. Nathaniel confidently stated that he had taken charge of the entire process, from hunting down the prey to carrying out the kill to skillfully butchering the meat and finally meticulously wrapping it up. However, it is worth noting that Nathaniel did not possess a firearm or a hunting license. Additionally, his credit card records indicate a peculiar pattern of behavior, as there was a noticeable halt in his food purchases for a month following Zach's disappearance. Eventually, a discovery was made. What appeared to be human hair was found inside his meat grinder. During an investigation at a former residence, a startling discovery was made. 21 bone fragments were unearthed, all belonging to a young boy estimated to be between 8 and 13 years old. The pipes in the house were unable to be inspected as they had been replaced as a result of frequent clogging problems. The DNA found in the hair and bones was determined to be from 2 African American males, but neither of them was Zach. The identity of these bones remains a mystery. Throughout his life, Nathaniel had pursued children as if it were a casual pastime. However, when it came to the legal process and trial, his focus narrowed to just 3 specific children. The case involving Zach had sparked widespread outrage and potentially had the power to bring Nathaniel to justice. Nevertheless, Zach's mother adamantly refused to accept the tragic fate of her son. Was it denial fueled by the unimaginable anguish linked to the unfolding truth, or maybe influenced by the defense team? The world would never discover the truth. Unfortunately, her refusal prevented any resolution to Zach's case. She was skeptical about any connection between Nathaniel and Zach's disappearance, as she had been convinced by a psychic that Zach was living in Italy. Surprisingly, she went as far as to promise her support for Nathaniel in the event that he faced trial for her son's tragic murder. In the end, the charges connected to Zach's disappearance had to be dismissed due to insufficient evidence. After years of dedicated effort, the police and prosecutors were left with no choice but to shift their attention to potential additional victims, and to do so with urgency. 2 names on the list discovered at Nathaniel's residence matched those of the boys residing in his apartment building. These boys were also captured on film that was confiscated from Nathaniel's home. In this chilling account, one of the boys bravely reveals that Nathaniel lured them into a sleepover only to subject them to unspeakable acts. However, the other boy, in a surprising twist, chose to visit Nathaniel in jail and even wrote to him, asserting their friendship and denying any harm done. This individual, who preyed on children and engaged in deviant behavior, was on the verge of being exposed within the legal system, allowing everyone to witness his true nature. Once again, the case was slipping through the cracks of the legal system. At the age of 36, Mary Patrone instantly recognized Nathaniel, the man who had assaulted her when she was just a young girl. Unfortunately, the statute of limitations had expired, preventing any charges from being brought against Nathaniel for this offense. In light of many shortcomings of the legal system, Nathaniel was ultimately handed a 130-year prison sentence with no chance of parole. This severe punishment was a result of his involvement in abduction, aggravated assault, and assault of multiple children. In 2008, Nathaniel was discovered unconscious in his prison cell as a result of a heart attack. His health had been deteriorating for a while, and on that fateful day, he was declared deceased. He carried numerous chilling secrets to his final resting place. Nathaniel's case can be attributed to various factors, such as insufficient communication and a lack of information sharing. As an example, his probation officer remained unaware of his additional offense back in 1977. In 1999, it's possible that the process might have undergone some changes. Surprisingly, a Montana court had no knowledge of Nathaniel's criminal activities in Massachusetts. The system's inability to comprehend Nathaniel's behavioral patterns resulted in its failure to effectively address the situation. The horrifying mistreatment of numerous children persisted for decades due to a severe lack of awareness. In 2011, a judge made the controversial decision to declare Zachary Ramsey legally dead, despite the strong objections from his mother. However, if Zach's mother's belief holds true, and he is indeed alive somewhere, he would now be in his 30s, resembling this. Nathaniel, a disturbing individual, managed to evade justice repeatedly, despite his heinous crimes. His 11-year stay in a mental institution and subsequent assault shortly after being released went unnoticed. Are modern systems capable of effectively addressing these situations? Or are there still individuals who manage to slip through loopholes, allowing them to continue perpetrating preventable horrors? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed today's video, we would greatly appreciate your support by subscribing to our channel, giving it a thumbs up, and sharing our content. Additionally, if there are any intriguing stories of criminal activity that you would like us to explore, please feel free to leave us a message in the comments section below. Until next time, take care and stay safe.